The Washington Capitals have fooled everyone. After a year where they had the worst plus minus of any playoff team, they have come back and bounced back in a way no one expected, with Ovechkin getting back into almost prime Ovechkin form. Dylan Strome proving himself to be a number one center. Connor Mcmichael being above a point per game. Protas being point per game. So many sneaky guys have taken that extra leap for the Washington Capitals this season. And right now, they look like a genuine threat to the NHL playoffs. We have to dive into everything that is making this possible and this incredible turnaround for the Washington Capitals on this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But before we get into the video, just got to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button. Over 90% of you guys who are watching this video are not subscribed. We've had an influx of a ton of new viewers, and if you like this kind of daily all NHL content, all your favorite teams, this is the spot to be. So hit the subscribe button down below. It's completely free. Mark, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to the Washington Capitals. I could only scratch the surface there in the intro of this video, but right now, they have turned things around from last year. I mean, there was a bit of a rough time last year. People thought, oh man, like this team's getting older, like they don't really have that much depth. They have some decent prospects, of course, drafting Ryan Leonard, who we'll get into later, but to me, the biggest surprise has been the offensive production this year. For a team that scored less than 3 goals per game last year, they're scoring over 4 a game right now. And the guy that I want to focus on first, I know we'll get to Ovi, but is Dylan Strome. Hasn't he just been phenomenal?
Yeah, I mean, looking at Dylan Strome coming in, I know this guy looked like he had a lot of potential, but coming in and really seizing the opportunity to take that number one role at center and be the playmaker that Ovi needs. I mean, looking at his points, 11 games played, 17 points, 13 assists with 4 goals. Dylan Strome still has room to grow. Yes, he's 27. Yes, he's getting into his prime, but he still has years to grow with this team. Prove to be even more dominant. I mean, Josh, looking at this, can you even say he can get much more dominant, putting up 17 points in 11 games? I know with Backstrom being out for the Capitals for the past few years, they were really missing this number one guy. And Josh, looking at Strome, did he come in and fill that expectation for you?
I think so for now. Like, I think Capitals fans have been quite high on him for the last few years for good reason. I mean, like, he is right now, right in the middle of his prime, and I think you're right. He has a couple of nice seasons coming up ahead now, but he's been a mid-20s goal scorer, 65-ish point pace kind of guy for the last 3 seasons. But this year was the year where, well, actually, I think a lot of people thought, man, is he going to regress in terms of points? I guess we didn't really know what was going to come, but right now that top line has been unreal. He has been playmaking for Ovechkin like I don't think anyone would have thought. And I know Capitals fans will have said, yeah, Strome is maybe that guy, but he kind of looked like a number 2 center for a few years, like on a really good team. But right now, his production has been phenomenal. He's been creating chances, and there's a couple other guys in that line too. I mean, look, we're going to have to talk about so many guys, but to quickly, I know we don't have his stats, but to Aliaksei Protas, the Belarusian winger, playing a bit on the first line with Strome and Ovechkin. Mark, he's up to a point per game as well. He's got 11 points on the season. I know we don't have too much to say about him, but I just want to give him a shout out because I feel like not many people realize just how good he is. And he's also a massive, massive guy.
I mean, looking at this guy, I picked him up in my fantasy league. This guy has been
Yeah.
outstanding with this team. A young guy coming in and producing on the top line with Ovi and Strome is quite a feat to just kind of jump into the NHL with. Like you said, being 6'6" adds that size, a bit of grit, and scoring with this team as well. But Josh, looking at this list, another guy I do want to point out, and I know we were talking about this before, is Connor Mcmichael. Now, I will say this is the best Connor MC in the entire NHL. Shout out Captain4 on Twitter. She said the exact same thing. But looking at Mcmichael coming in, last year he had a productive year with this Caps team. He didn't have the best 4 games in the playoffs, but coming in, a young guy putting up 33 points in 80 games. He comes in, joins this Caps team on the second line, and we see this guy put up over a point per game. Looking at Mcmichael only being 23 years old, Josh, do you think this might be an X factor for the Capitals going into the playoffs, other than, of course, Ovi?
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. If the Capitals can keep this up, now they have slowed down a bit since their scorching hot start. They were first in the division, I believe, at one point. But still, Connor Mcmichael has looked unbelievable, especially in terms of goal scoring. Like again, he scored 18 goals last year. He's already at 7 in 11 games this season. So by this point, he'll have 21 goals in 33 games if he keeps up this pace, which he probably won't. But still, being over a point per game while being a second line player is something a lot of teams can only dream of. And Tom Wilson has had a bit of a resurgence points wise wise as well. Pierre-Luc Dubois, even though he has not really been the, Pierre-Luc Dubois that earns that kind of money, he has not been terrible for the team, and he has been rolling offensively, at least with this line. There's a lot of dynamicism in this line with Connor Mcmichael being a little more speedy. I don't know if that's necessarily his fault, but he's a little more agile and more offensively oriented. We got Pierre-Luc Dubois and Tom Wilson, who are a bit bigger. Wilson being a solid finisher, but also an enforcer. Dubois kind of doing a bit of everything. So it's a really interesting line. And just to ask this question, like, how many goals do you think Connor McMichael can get this season? Like, at this point now, I'm saying minimum 25. And if you can get a 25 goal scorer who's 23 years old on your second line, you're Washington, who is looking like, you have some prospects, one of which we'll get into a bit later, but to see a young guy, former first round pick back in 2019, be able to finally take that leap and be that kind of good second line winger for you. To me, that's exactly what you want if you want to make your way back to the playoffs.
And I mean, looking at McMichael, looking at even Ovi, looking at Strome, this team is producing. Going to the question you just asked, so I could definitely see McMichael going out, scoring the 20 to 25 goals. I mean, we've seen him in the junior with the OHL London Knights.
Oh, yeah.
He goes in 36 goals, 47 goals. We know he has a bit of a scoring touch, and he has shown that it's a scoring touch, especially last season, leading into this one. I'm saying right now, McMichael can get you the 25 goals, and I do think he's going to break 60 points. But Josh, the biggest thing with this Capitals team, and I know we were once again looking at this before, this team has been abysmal on the power play, but we're still seeing the elite production out of a lot of these guys. Strome, Ovi, McMichael, even a guy like Tom Wilson has turned back time a tiny bit, putting up 3 assists and 6 goals over the span. Do you think with this team, once they finally get the power play clicking, once Spencer Carberry gets this team in gear, do you think they're going to hit a second level, or do you think they're going to kind of fizzle out a tiny bit?
I mean, like, here's the thing for me. The Washington Capitals power play over the last couple seasons has, like, where they're passing the puck. And there's a few teams in the NHL who are like that. So it does make them a little bit predictable. I'm not saying they do this every single play for Alex Ovechkin, but it definitely is a focus. But the thing is, like, yeah, if you can get that power play up from what it is now, 10.8%, up to like the high teens or something, even close to 20, you're even more of a threat. Like, you're scoring 4 goals a game without that. You got Alex Ovechkin, who I guess, let's talk about him briefly right now, too, who's only 34 goals back of Wayne Gretzky, who has been off to a scorching hot start. 7 goals, 7 assists for 14 points in 11 games. He's, like, I don't even know what happened to him this year. Again, last year we said down year with 31 goals. This guy's on pace for a bunch more this year. But if they can get that power play rolling, if they can really get a guy like Strome or McMichael, or even like Wilson bouncing back a bit, Dubois to be a net front presence, other threats other than just pass to Ovechkin, I think this can lead to a lot more production for the team. But even Ovi himself, I'm starting to wonder if he's going to be able to break the record this season at this rate.
Honestly, if we're looking at Ovi season, I mean, coming in, he has 7 goals in the 11 games. I think there's a strong chance, especially when we get to the end of the year, when he finally, and when I say finally, he's going to do it. But when he gets the taste, when he's within a dozen goals, half a dozen goals, I think we're really going to see him really turn up the gears on this. Maybe if the Capitals are in the race for the President's Trophy, or if they have a secure spot, maybe we start to see them feed Ovi a little bit, send them into the postseason with this hot streak, with Ovi breaking the record. I think that would fire everyone up. And looking at this team, there's so much talent. I mean, looking through, Mangia Payne's another guy they brought into this lineup. But there's also someone, and their top prospect that we wanted to touch on as well, which is Ryan Leonard. He's a forward playing in the Hockey East right now. This is another name that Caps fans are going to have to get used to. 8th overall in 2023. 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points. He's a big body. He's not the fastest skater, but he's going to skate hard. He's going to be an awesome shot. We've seen him score 31 goals in 41 games last season with Boston College. Looking at some talent coming up, Josh, do you think the Capitals, yes, you do have the aging core with Tom Wilson. You have Ovi getting up in age. Do you think they're going to continue opening up their window, having a guy like Dylan Strome, McMichael, and even a guy like Ryan Leonard coming in the next season or two?
I mean, I think they'd like for that to happen. Ryan Leonard, of course, a very physical player, despite not being much more over 6 feet tall, but he's strong. He's got a great shot. And he's got a ton of offensive talent. The thing with Washington that does concern me a little bit is kind of the variety of ages they have going. Like, Strome's in his prime right now. And so, if you look at a lot of the core guys are aging a bit. John Carlson's turning 35 pretty soon. You got Tom Wilson, who's well into his 30s. Alex Ovechkin, nearly 40. You got a bunch of your guys who are your top producers, even right now on the defensive and offensive end. who are just getting up there in age. And while Mcmichael's pretty young and Strome is in his prime, you ideally would want kind of guys to line up in a timeline, but we'll just have to wait and see what they plan to do after Ovi, because honestly, they won their Stanley Cup. Right now, they're just going to let Ovi do kind of what he needs to do and see what they have with their team. I think there's not necessarily a rush to bring Ryan Leonard up. If they're in contention come the end of the season, I mean, you look at that bottom six, and I got to be honest, there's not a lot of guys there that I wouldn't replace with Ryan Leonard, but well, I have to wait and see because I think there's a lot of question marks there. But before we end off this video, Mark, I want to touch on one more thing because we didn't talk about it quite yet, but it is the goalies. It's Logan Thompson and it's Charlie Lindgren. That's the name. I almost said Zach Fucale for some reason. Like, there's just names that have gone in and out of the Habs organization. But Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson, while neither of them are posting above a 900 save percentage now, both their goals against average are around or below 3. Logan Thompson is 5-0 as of the recording of this video. While they haven't been like the best goalie tandem in the NHL, they've been winning games and they've been very solid night in, night out. And I think that as well has really helped Washington feel a little more secure in a lot of their games.
And I mean, looking at these guys, you also got to look at the blue liners in front of them. This is from daily faceoffs, so there is quite a few injuries. So I do have the puck P day here as well. Bringing in a guy like bringing in a guy like Jacob Chikrin.
Yeah.
They built this team. They have great forwards. They have great defensemen. The goaltenders, like you said, haven't been putting up the best stats. But when they finally get their mojo going, when they start protecting this crease even better, we're going to see them hit the second tier. When we see these guys start getting shutouts, start having bigger games, the Capitals can really take it to the next level. What were your guys' thoughts on the Washington Capitals hot start? Do you think Ovi's going to break the record? What's your thoughts on Ryan Leonard maybe joining the team next year? Let us know down in the comments. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Josh, and take care.